With that introduction, I don't think you really need to know very much about me. I've got a cold at the moment, which you can gather, and I cannot perform, and I will not be singing, you can be sure of that. The John Ilott Trust is known to many of you, particularly the older members of the club, the more senior members, and the newer members. You might have heard of it, seen about it in the publications, the annual report, those sorts of things. But it's a very important part of this club, which has grown over the years, that Ilott name has been so synonymous with the Rotary Club of Wellington, and it still is, and it's still carrying out a very important function within the club and within the wider community, and not just the Wellington community, but New Zealand's community. As it says there, it gives you when it was originally established by Sir John Ilott himself in 1960. Then from 73 it was taken over by his son, Jack Ilott, a member of this club for many years and was president at the time and was in this club when I joined, and he was a very dominating in many ways figure, but a very interesting figure. The trust grew from that initial grant of 500,000 to over 1 million by 1992. And at that stage it was Jack's determination that it be established in a more formal way, and he called upon the Rotary Club of Wellington to undertake the future administration of the trust. He had carried it out by himself in his own particular way for that time, but he determined that the Rotary Club would be the best to carry it forward into the future, to be assured that it would be ongoing. And so that was done in 1992, as it mentions there. A further legacy was made of 1 million in 1999 on his death, and the trust fund itself now stands at 3.3 million. There's been a contribution by the wider Ilott family, with Jack's sister when her death was prior to her death, more was contributed to it, and it now has a capital fund of $3.3 million. Those guidelines established that the trust would be administered through 3 trustees, which would be the president of the club, the immediate past president, and the incoming president. So a small trustee number of only 3, and of course they change on a regular basis because the president changes every year, but that was the determination, and very prescriptive how it was established, and that's how it is managed to this day. In addition, the important part was that it made provision for an advisory committee who would support the trustees with the assessing of applications for a grant and providing that recommendation on how the annual grants would be approved. That advisory committee has 5 members who are listed there. Myself, for my sins, have been asked to be chairman of it and have been for the last 3 years. Sue Patterson, Peter Halstead, Gray Hewson, and Keith Newell, who has come on this year and replacing Peter Cohen, who has now resigned from the club. The trustees receive financial advice through fund managers, Craig Investment Partners, very ably and very successfully, and the trust treasurer, Dennis Kilcaldy. The trust, as I said, is very prescriptive, and it defines quite clearly the areas in where grants are to be made, and there are 8 categories there. They have been reviewed in a previous time and determined that those numbers, or that number of categories should remain, and so there they are listed out there. The first one is to help newly formed groups, to provide them with some seed money, not to establish them from day one, that here's a source of funding for them, some seed money to get underway. Assistance with literacy and reading, advancing sexual education, assisting parents, problems with children and young people, problems of babies in preschool, to assist women, including re-entering the workforce, and the final one, offering assistance training to individuals highly skilled in the arts. You'll see that there was an influence which was clearly in Jack's mind when he established this to help women, that he felt there was a need for women to be given more encouragement, more support, to go forward in the community in many ways, and that emphasis is still there, and on the applications that come forward come from particularly a wide range of women's groups out there in the community dealing with many problems with young people themselves. You've got no idea the range of them that there are throughout the community in all sectors, and Jack had this clear determination that he wanted to help women. In addition, he stipulated that there would be designated individual grants each year to one of a number of organisations. They don't each get a grant every year, but on a cyclical basis, they each get the grant. So there's a National Gallery, now of course within Te Papa, but with meeting with Te Papa, it's clear when the money goes to Te Papa, it does not go into their general revenue, it goes to the Ilott. There's an Ilott room at Te Papa, as it were, where some of the Ilott etchings and that are displayed, and it goes towards that area. To the Hearing Association, to Crippled Children, now CCS of course, Marriage Guidance, now Relationship Services, the Heart Foundation and the Rotary Foundation. And that's on that basis. They get a specific grant of $5,000 every year to cover their particular need, but they don't get it each individually. The grants are generally in the range of $1,000 to $2,000. That again was laid down that there was not to be one-off grants of a significant amount to a few organisations. It was rather to be a smaller amount to a wide range of organisations. So the grants are now up to $2,000 per grant, and the trustees can elect to repeat a grant or make a special grant if there's available funds for it. So for 2014, there were 156 applications were received, of which 101 were successful. And so the total amount granted was $155,000. So the income is granted each year, and fortunately the income has been kept up to a satisfactory level. Despite some changes in the marketplace, that we're still able to give out up to that limit. It dropped down to $140,000 a couple of years ago as income was declining, but it's back to now $155,000 for last year, and it's expected that it should be at least that for this coming year. Majority of those applications come within categories 6 and 7, which are assisting problems of babies, preschool children, assisting women. Generally they come within that category. They're distributed across New Zealand, they're not just within the Greater Wellington area, and included in that always there's a special grant which Jack Ilott had endorsed for a grant to be made to the New Horizons for Women Trust, a specific grouping within Wellington, which this club generally goes and makes the presentation to them for that, and also to the Zonta Club every 2 years. And you'll recall a couple of weeks ago when Dame Margaret Sparrow spoke to us, she made reference to that the Ilott Trust has contributed a grant of $2,000 every year. Grant applications are received each year only between 1 October and the 10th of November. It's quite specific, it's on the website, and so people apply during that time, and the recommendations are then made through the advisory committee to the trustees by the 30th of November of each year. Just to give you an idea of some of the organisations who receive it, and this has been the eye-opener to me, is this range of organisations, small, out there in the wider community, all seeking assistance, seeking support and seeking help. They make a very formal application. It can extend to a number of pages, as it were, and when those applications are received, they're distributed amongst the 5 members of the advisory committee, and we all read every application. It's circulated around over that month of October and early November to read them all, and so then we come together once everybody's read them all to make that determination of who shall receive a grant. So it's not just a 1 or 2 person process, it's 5 people do it, and there's some quite, at times, not too heated, but there is debate, an argument, is it worthy, is it not? So to give you an example of some of the groups who have applied and been successful in this last year, the Alzheimer's Waikato Charitable Trust, of course based in Hamilton, the Battered Women's Trust of Christchurch, a name which at first you read and you wondered, what on earth is this, a Battered Women's Trust? When you read their structure and their organisation, they're doing a surprising job out there in the community of helping what it describes as battered women. Family Works through the Presbyterian Support in Wellington, the Fielding Play Centre, Help of Auckland, which is the Auckland Sexual Abuse Help Foundation, the Lower Hutt Women's Centre, Morrinsville Community House. A number of these smaller communities have houses which are providing a resource for particularly women and families to come to get support and help. They need funding. We've provided that to the Morrinsville Community House, the Otago Community Hospice, the Richmond Waimea Toy Library, a small amount of money, but again, there's a regular request from a number of toy libraries around the country. They need to replace their toys, as it were, over time, as it were, where the Ilott Trust is one of the few that could support them within this category. The Seabrook Mackenzie Trust for Specific Learning Disabilities, the Women's Network of Wanganui. That's just a few of those 101, as it were, which were successful in December last year, and hopefully will go on applying in this coming year. They apply principally now through the the website, as it were. Previously we distributed the pamphlet about it round to the various church organisations in Wellington to put it out into their wider network. That's not necessary now, it comes through that system. And so here the Rotary Club of Wellington, through the John Ilott Trust, is doing a very positive and very practical work out there in the wider community. I think the Rotary Club of Wellington does get that recognition from the organisations who receive the money. They acknowledge that, and hopefully it will be ongoing. Once you're appointed to the advisory committee, you're not there for life, you do your turn and then it moves on to somebody else. But it's a challenging role, I enjoy it, and I find it very eye-opening to know what is going on in the community, and I think this is great that Rotary, through this trust, which the Ilott family have established, can do that work. Thank you, Chair.